Yeah, hello everyone. I'm audible.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So, very good evening, first of all. And my name is Sunny. As you already know, my name is Sunny Batwa. I'm community group leader of Salesforce Developer Group Gorakhpur. I'm leading this group from last 1 year, and this is the very growing community till now in my area. And as my name is Sunny, as and I'm leading the organization Cybermatic Consulting Private Limited, that is the Salesforce consulting company. I'm Salesforce consultant and solution architect by professions. And basically, journey to Salesforce mentor and the MuleSoft mentor, and lots of things. But our agenda is totally different for today. So I'm very happy to host an insightful virtual session on in Asynchronous Apex under the Salesforce developer Gorakhpur community. And in today's sessions, in today's Salesforce ecosystems, handling large data volumes, optimizing processing times, ensuring smooth system performance are very tough. So asynchronous Apex play is very good important role in achieving this by allowing Salesforce development to process operation efficiency in the background. So in the session, we will explore future methods, Queueable Apex, Batch Apex, Schedule Apex, and their use cases, and best practices for designing scalable uh, and high performing Salesforce solutions. So, guys, you are whether you are from Salesforce admin background, you are from Salesforce developer background, consultant background, architect background. So, this session will provide valuable insight to help you master asynchronous processing. So,
Sunny, you forgot to mention about the Cloud Gyata's training.
yes, yes. Yes. It is the basically it is the community session. So I cannot mention here. Uh,
Okay.
so Yeah, so now I'm handing over to Ankit for the session. So thank you, Ankit, for again accepting my invitation. So yeah,
Yeah.
we can start. Let's grow together. Let's succeed together.
Yeah. 1 second.
And we have 56 like trailblazer in one meeting. So all the best for
Yeah.
session. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So we are going to cover Asynchronous Apex, architecting scalable and efficient solutions for that. Before we go forward, I will just brief those who don't know me. My name is Ankit Jain. So I'm a technical architect, Salesforce architect. Ex-PWC, IBM, there are a lot of other companies as well. So I'm 19X certified, both application, system architect, and B2B solution architect as well. I'm a mentor at TopMate. I'm a community speaker. This is my YouTube channel by the name Mock Interviews with Ankit Jain. So then this is my LinkedIn, whoever wants to connect. We'll just take a small pause so that if you want to scan, you would be able to do that. And next, this is my YouTube channel, and this is a QR code for that, so you can scan. Also, it's shared in the chat as well, so either way it works. So I have tried to cover many mock interviews and some technical sessions as well, and we few of the technical question answers also we have made done the discussion, so you can visit. And there are other sessions as well which I covered, like large data volume and solid principles. Like these, some of the technical sessions also you would find on the channel. Okay. And this is a forward looking statement, like as any other community event, like few of the topics intentionally or unintentionally I might cover. So make the purchasing decisions based on whatever is generally available. Now, what is the agenda? First, we are talking about, the topic was asynchronous Apex, but first we need to understand what is actually asynchronous and what is synchronous, and then why asynchronous. What are the different features that are available? Then, like we are going one by one, like future method, queueable. Then we are covering finalizer, scheduled Apex, batch classes, and what are design considerations for queueable, and others as well. Like this is a short agenda I mentioned, but content-wise, it's quite large. So, what is synchronous? Synchronous means it is ongoing. user is blocked until that operation is complete. Like suppose I make do a click and I see a spinner. Until that spinner goes, I'm not able to do anything. I'm waiting for the server to complete its operation and then I'm able to do my things. So what it means is like it is like one threaded, one step at a time is only happening. I'm clicking, the user waits until it's done and then it execute. Then only I'm able to proceed. So now any real time, how do I relate? You are saying like it would user is blocked. So if you consider it, like suppose whenever I have to suppose create a LWC component, I click on that. By default, it is synchronous only. Unless you explicitly want to make it asynchronous, you would it's synchronous only. And then even in flows, I mentioned when in run in real time. There's a reason why I have mentioned like when run in real time for flows, because many people don't know in record triggered flows as well. You can make it asynchronous in the after flow, like in our actions related records. You have the option to make a flow run in asynchronous. Means after committing, it would work like a future method and it would execute the functionality after that. So you have the asynchronous operation that can be done by flows as well. Visual force is kind of very old. So triggers, obviously it runs synchronously. I make a change and the triggers get called. Then why do I, or what are the use cases for synchronous? I want immediate, like whatever I do, user needs to give the feedback instantly. Instant means on the same moment. Whenever I click it, suppose I'm entering a details. Okay, I click it. I suppose I missed a field. It should show me error on the spot. Like yes, you missed this thing. So and any updates you want to make. So you do synchronous operations for such kind of use cases only. Uh, any question? Sunny, we are recording the session, right? You have started the recording.
Yes, yes, it started.
Okay. So, any questions so far? Please feel free to unmute or raise a hand or put the question in the comment. So we will go over the if anything major is blocking you from means is you are stuck on something. Please let me know. Now, next is some limitations on synchronous operations. Like, see, we are just 10 seconds. In 10 seconds, the response user needs to click the response. Sorry, I did hear some noise. Uh, Okay, I assume it's some miss. So just 10 seconds we have on the CPU to get the response. If suppose we are not able to get the response from server within 10 seconds, it would give you CPU timeout exception. So you have to be very much cautious. Like if I'm doing anything synchronously, I need to be sure like yes, within 10 seconds the response would be given by the server. And heap size also like for synchronous operations, Salesforce only gives 6 MB of heap size. So considering these things, it's not advisable to go for any heavy lifting or any long running operations in the synchronous mode. Okay, I take it as everything is going fine. Now what
Yes, yes, going fine. Yeah.
asynchronous means, I can just it would run in the background. I don't need to worry. Like it's like working in a sprint. You have the task assigned to in the sprint, then you can accordingly, you don't have to finish it immediately, but you have to take some time. Whenever you have bandwidth, you complete that task. It's like that. Okay. So whatever are long running processes, our sprint is also kind of long task only. So you can consider relate to that in that manner as well. So any heavy lifting you want to do, or you want to do any call outs, and instance means on the spot you don't need a like user, we don't need feedback from user, or whatever functionality you have built doesn't impact the user directly. Like suppose in my previous projects, like what happened, there was a use case like where there was too much lag coming up. Like we had all the heavy lifting done in the synchronous mode, like in the normal Apex controller. Now like the performance was going degrading and the user feed was having very unpleasant experience. So what we did is like we identified the operations which user is not impacted directly. Suppose there are few records that needs to be created but does not impact the user access directly, and his next operation is not dependent on the heavy lifting that we are doing it right now. So we moved that to asynchronous mode. We use future method in the that use case, but any other mode also we could have gone, like we could have got Queueable as well. So if the thing comes up around the heavy lifting, go with asynchronous. But there are some considerations, like everything comes with a consideration. Like it won't be executed. We don't know. Like at this minute, like suppose the time right now is like 8:47. So it is not guaranteed like the operation will be done at 8:48 only or 8:49 only. So like you have to be a little bit flexible on the execution time when we are going with asynchronous. And obviously like there are some limits, like only these many jobs you can queue, means put it in a queue. And how do you do error handling? Like suppose in trigger I know if something I need to, I'm going in wrong, like suppose I missed a val or I have a field required, then I can show a user the error message. Or suppose any exception comes up, I can insert the custom log record, or I can use platform events and I would be able to do the things. But how do I handle it in the asynchronous mode? Because I even don't know when it would be executed. So you have to be a little considerate around these things. Obviously, there are some workarounds which Salesforce are already given for that. So we'll cover that in further slides. Any major questions or any important point you want to highlight, or anything you're not following? Please let me know. You can raise a hand. So I assume everything is like everybody is following, right? Yeah, it's clear. Okay. Okay, I think we have a question from Pankaj. Yeah. If it's a short question, then we can I can answer it right now. Otherwise, like we'll have to take it later. But yeah, Pankaj, you can ask your question.
Hi Ankit, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah, so how we can handle the CPU time limit error?
Yeah, so through asynchronous operations, the time limit is a little higher. Like you get 60 seconds. 60 seconds CPU time limit you get for asynchronous operations, so you can do the heavy lifting in asynchronous mode.
Okay, okay, yeah.
Okay. Then we'll go further slides. The next is why asynchronous Apex. Like, see, as Sunny has already mentioned, like around the large data volume. So, and even in my project as well, the volume was huge. So the synchronous mode does not work. So for such operations, or if users you are getting like, imagine like we all visit different websites or we use the applications. If suppose the application takes more than a second or 2 seconds, we get irritated. Like, see, users would use your application only if it is like giving you the response very quickly. If the response is bad, people won't adopt to that system. So for some of those use cases as well, we have to go with asynchronous Apex. Like in my project earlier, when I worked on a large data volume, the users having an unpleasant experience. Like the response from the customer was taking around 5 to 10 seconds, means 5 seconds. So we our users can't wait that much. They would be annoyed. Do something. So then we thought like let's move. We identified the operations like which could be moved into asynchronous, which we'll have to still do it in synchronous mode, and then we handled it. So this is a very practical use case. Even you think it as your, if you are an end user, you would obviously want the application to respond very quickly. And suppose you know like this operation will be taking too much time, like it has too many operations. Like suppose you have to create a data on 2 3 objects. So and you know like those triggers are very, there are various, too much heavy lifting done, or there are too many automations. So because of those, like the time would be too much consumed by the CPU. And as I already mentioned, like within 10 seconds for synchronous mode, you will have to make sure that the operation gets completed within 10 seconds. Suppose it crosses that, you will get the CPU time limit exception. Okay. Now, what are the different options, or what are the features? You can go with queueable, you can go with scheduled apex, you can go with batch, and future methods. Uh, now, future method, we all know about future method. Like it would run in the background, simple to implement. I can just write at the rate future, and I am happy. Like yes, I can do the things. Other thing like but what are the technical from the technical endpoint, like what should be your deciding factor, like I should go with the future method. So it should be very quick to implement. Like if suppose I want don't have much time, so instead of creating a new class, I can just create a small future method, write the code, it should be good. And I also, if I also get a mixed DML, I go with future method. But like for this use case, you can either go with future method as well as you can go with your queueable as well. Both are the recommended approach is queueable, but like to do the things quickly, many people prefer future method. And again, like future method, it executes. You are not able to track it, like whether the future method is executed or not. In the debug log, you will get a separate debug log for future method. Remember that. And you get higher limits in asynchronous mode. Like in our regular one, asynchronous operations, you get 150 DML, say 100 SOQL. But in asynchronous mode, you get 200 SOQL statements, like querying the record, like select ID from user or select ID from account. You can have 200 statements for that, and heap size is also a little bit more. I think it is 11 or 12 MB for asynchronous mode. But these are the good things about future method. Now, what is the business case? Suppose, like if suppose imagine like future method was not there, what we will be missing? If I get mixed email, I didn't had any workaround for that. If suppose I have to do a call out and trigger, I don't have an option. I have to go with means I'm able to do the call out in triggers just because I have the future method. And suppose I know like there's a slight delay I want in my execution. So to have a small delay, I can also have future method for that kind of use case. I hope I'm making some sense.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Yes, Anju.
okay. Now, uh, some of for those who don't know about set means mixed TML, mixed TML error you comes up when you have a setup and non-setup objects. You are doing a DML operation on them. Like suppose you're inserting a user and also you're inserting an account in the same transaction. Then you get a error. Now someone will ask like what are setup objects? So setup objects are like directly user access related things. Like suppose you have user profile, role, permission set. So if you're utilizing those in the code, means these are objects are setup objects. Suppose in the Apex code you're inserting a user record and then you're inserting an account. So account is a non-setup. Like how do you identify it as a non-setup? It is a setup. Like if it has something to do with the security part of it, it's definitely a setup object. Okay. Now the next part, a small code example. Yeah, one more part. By default, you cannot do a call out in future method. You might say like we have been doing it from the last 10 years, 13 years. You are able to do that only because you are having that call out equal to true. If that call out equal to true is not there, by default the call out is equal to false. One second, I'm just able to means thinking like there was some interview question related to some of the uh, content I just covered earlier. No worries. Now, why Queueable method was actually Queueable was actually introduced. So Queueable was introduced in 2015, means winter 15. Before that, only future method was available. Now, why that was introduced? See, there were some drawbacks of future method. First thing, I don't know when that would complete. So I would need to in code, I should know like whether it has the execution is complete or not. But that I was not able to check, and I was able to only pass the primitive data types. Any use object if I wanted to pass, I was not able to do that. Now the interview question comes like, if suppose you are able to do that in your queueable, why it is not allowed in means you give the logic that in future methods we are not allowed to pass objects because by the time it would get executed, the state of the object might change. Right? That is the very common question. I hope everyone is able to relate to what I'm saying.
Ankit, could you please repeat it?
Yeah. Yeah. What I'm saying is like you often get an interview question saying like why you are not able to means why it is not allowed in future methods to pass object as a parameter or as object, sorry, like account or quantity you can't pass as it is as a parameter in future method directly, right?
So I think return type yes is the void. I think, right?
Return type, no, I'm not talking about return type, I'm talking about the parameter.
Yes, yes, we cannot pass.
Unlock related. Uh, like record is unlocked, locked in a future method.
It's not allowed to pass that because the state of the object record might change by the time you that future method would get executed. Then you might think like logically if the same thing is happening with queueable as well, I am able to pass the object, then how it is allowed but in future method it is not allowed? Both are asynchronous. So the thing is like in queueable they fix this problem of handling the state, and that was in winter 15. So you can consider queueable as an enhancement over the future method. So they thought like they have already given queueable for doing such operations, so why do I again have to fix the future methods? So they kept the future method as it is but allowed this ability of handling the passing object as a parameter in queueable. Also, I was not able to do chaining, like suppose from one future method I had to call another future method or any asynchronous operation. No, that was not allowed. But with queueable you are able to do that. Some misconceptions I want to clear around the queueable. Always in your practical developer experience you would always use observe like we are always doing the callouts in batch classes only. Hardly you have seen anybody do a callout in queueable. So you might think whether that is allowed or not. So the thing is, yes, you can have a queueable with doing a callout as well. You have to just have the database.allow callouts implemented and you would be able to do that. And you can call future method from your queueable and you can directly meet in the execute method, you are able to do that. Any questions? Like I means don't hesitate in asking questions. See, I am very much open to any questions, or if you want to even ask it at the end of the session, that is also fine. Just keep a note of the questions if by chance you forget. Okay.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you just tell the real-time examples of this future method and queueable effects,
uh,
regional scenarios?
okay. Very simple example like suppose you are creating a community user. Okay, suppose you get a details like a user is filling a form. Okay, name, email id, and that's it. Okay, now what I do, I have to create a community user. How a community user is created? You first create a contact, then you are creating a user, correct?
Yeah,
Contact is a setup object or non-setup object?
yeah, setup object.
Sorry,
Setup object.
contact is not a setup object. Contact is a non-setup object. User is a setup object.
Yeah, yeah.
So now if you try to insert create a community user in one go in the same transaction, you would get an error. So for the simplicity, what we do is like we create the we create the account and contact, or we create the person account in one transaction and then create another transaction by calling a future method and creating a user in that. Or suppose like if I have to go with Queueable, then suppose I have this use case of like I want to do more chaining. Like suppose I want like few records are there, and like suppose I'm creating a user like from field service perspective, like you're creating a user, then you again have a service resource to be created. You're first getting just the contact, from contact you're creating user, from user again you want to create a service resource. So if that kind of complexity comes up where you need to chain, you could go with Queueable. If the chaining
Yeah.
is your use case, then go with Queueable. If you don't need chaining, you just need the small use case where you just want to handle the mixed HTML, future method would be fast to implement.
Okay,
But the
Ankit.
problem, but the challenge with future method is only around the error logging, and you won't know whether it's completed or not. With Queueable, you are able to handle this scenario as well.
Hello, I'm audible.
Yes.
I had a question. Why are we able to pass complex data types in Queueable Apex? It also run. It also executes in later in time,
Yeah, we are able to
same as
pass
future.
that. Yeah, see what happened is like uh, in the future method, Salesforce did not had this ability. Later means they, you can consider like, see, it would be that is a task of, means that task would have been assigned to a developer. He was not able to figure it out till winter 15, like how do you do that? Then he thought like, let's create a new functionality that would allow the users to do that. Now would you fix the entire whatever the code is written earlier, or would you just tell the users like go with use this functional, this feature instead of your earlier one to do accomplish that job? So same thing Salesforce also did. Like they fixed that problem of passing the record as a parameter in queueable method. Then they thought like, shall I we update allow this ability in future method, because obviously that would take them time. So they thought like, let's tell the developers like to use queueable instead of again fixing the future method. So that way, like their focus was like, obviously you can consider it like future method was the primitive, and then queueable is an enhancement over your future method. There's not a single thing with future method, in future method you are able to do, but in queueable apex you are not able to do. Are you able to relate to what I'm saying, or shall I elaborate it more?
Please elaborate more. I didn't get the
See what
technical part.
see the problem statement is, you are saying like complex data types. What is complex data type? That is your question.
Yes, as objects and all.
Correct. So are you able to pass s objects as a parameter in future method? No.
No.
In Queueable you are able to do that.
Yes.
And the reason like Salesforce did not again do that is like they thought like people will, if they had the use case of passing the record or a subject as a parameter, they would use Queueable. Why would means they know the limitation of future method, so why would they again try with future method and then fix that?
Okay. Okay. I get it. Their intention was to move the people from using future method to Queueable
Queueable.
class, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
It is an enhancement. Like you can imagine,
Okay.
like when the sales was initially started, they just had the future method. Cable was introduced in winter 15.
Yes. Yes. I get it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hi,
Ankit.
Ankit.
Yeah, you can go one by one.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
Ankit.
have a question. Sorry. So yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay. So Ankit, my question is, if you are not passing like a S object in feature method, right? And I mean Qable we can pass that. So my question is, I'm passing like a thousand records in Qable, right?
all those records. So will it block thousands records there for
Queueable.
processing? Yeah, for processing further.
Queueable does not block you. You can
Like
pass the.
suppose I have to make I have to send the order details to third party system. I'm making
Okay.
call out inside Queueable, right?
Yeah.
So okay, so I have to make like a deserialize that order details in QBX, and I will make a call. Okay, so
Correct.
for that instance, that 200 like 2,000 records will be blocked for processing
They won't be blocked as such for processing. Like, see, what would happen? They would be passed as a parameter.
because the let me okay because the limitation in future method, as we are not passing object, just because in maybe whenever transaction is there in between, they
The
might
state
get
might change. The
manipulated,
state might
right?
change. Correct.
Or maybe change. But in this case, Queueable, it is not happening, as it's like an
Correct.
improvement of future method,
Future method. Correct.
right? But my question is like I'm passing 2,000 records in Queueable Apex and making call out. Okay, I'm sending the order details to the external system. For example, let's say delivery
Correct.
system. I'm passing that
Correct.
order.
Correct.
So
Okay.
my question is like, will it block 2,000 records at once, or what? I
No,
mean,
no, no, no. See, what happens is like when it this kind of thing happens. So
mhm.
before making the update on that record, it gets the current instance of the record. Like, what is the current state of this record? It
Okay.
checks just as the primitive check, like whether this user has still has the access of that record or not.
Okay.
Something like that. It checks, but it doesn't block
Mhm.
the means your records are not logged. You're able to edit it. Like suppose in the meanwhile, like that future queueable is executed in the backend, the user is free to make the modification on that as well.
Okay. Okay.
Because otherwise, like business flow wise, it would be a very much setback for the user. Like I'm blocked by means I'm not able to make modifications while it is in queueable. That is not the case here.
Mhm.
It I means I think like it would take the late whatever is happening at the last, that would it would consider that only. It won't block anything.
Mhm. Because the scenario was I have written a trigger, okay, and
Mhm.
I'm calling that queueable class from trigger, okay. So there is a updation of 2,000 records at a time.
Okay.
So whenever order details is updated or order is created, okay, 2,000 records we are just importing to the Salesforce order as a order created, and we are calling to third party system, and we are just updating we are sending the details to the third party system.
Correct.
Question that is my question, like we are blocking 2,000 records at a time for that queueable Apex or not?
No, you're not blocking that.
Okay. Okay.
Users feel free to, like in the backend, if suppose they want to make any other modification, that also the user can do. Just you have to make sure like it's not happening at the same time. The reason being, like when that specific record is being updated by Salesforce, it should not be like both the places it's happening at once.
Okay, got it. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah. Next question.
Uh, Ankit, just as you said, there will be in future method why we are not able to pass is like the state of the object may change.
Correct.
Uh, but how the same thing is achieved in Queueable, like something lock is placed, or
No,
what is
no.
happening in the background?
In the background, as per my understanding, like what they have done is like they're taking making some checks, like whether the means actual problem was what happens while you pass an object, the state might change. And so I think the workaround that they have done is like they're taking the latest state whatever is therein and considering that as the final state. Means whatever is, suppose you pass that like where the name equal the name was of the record was say uh, CGI, for example. And in the transaction, like suppose you are updating title to something else. So now what should happen is like if you're making an update, means all the things are happening concurrently, it would see like what is the latest state and consider as per that. It would not be like user is blocked or anything like that.
Whereas future will not do so, is it? It will.
Correct, correct, correct. Because at that time, like when future method was introduced, like in the very beginning of Salesforce implementation, at that time they didn't means it was not handled for such scenarios. So later Salesforce identified this scenario and they thought like let's solve it. For solving this, they introduced Queueable Apex.
Ankit, one more question I have. So in future, we were not getting the IDs of the records, right? That was being processed. But in Queueable,
We are able to do that, yes.
yeah, exactly. So that might be the reason why the state is not changing. Of course, so in future, of course, the state might change. That was the reason it was not being passed. But in Queueable, since we are getting the IDs as well of the respective records, and that is why it is always taking the latest state of that record, and that's is the reason. That might
Exactly.
be the reason.
Correct. That could be one of the reason, but uh, I would say like yeah, that's no, yeah. I think yes, yes, right. Okay, let's proceed further. Now there's a simple example of a code which is updating the contact title. It's just a play kind of a placeholder code. Just we have to use a queuable interface, and it's passing the IDs as the parameter, and then it's creating that records and updating that. Okay. Now there's a catch. The catch is no, I think it's in the next slide. Yeah. Now this is, I think, code is quite straightforward. We are just passing the parameters and then just retrieving the IDs and then updating it with the new title. I think that's fine, right? I don't think like that it needs any explicit explanation, I guess. I'm taking it as a yes. So what now the next topic is finalizers. See, the problem earlier what used to happen is like if suppose I have to check it like check if a cable is processed or not. If I had to do a polling, like I had to hit the server check like what is the async apex job I status whether it is completed or not. Then only I would be able to know that. But suppose I don't want to do that. There was no other mechanism. So what Salesforce did is like it gave me a callback. Like when the particular how we have like try, catch, and finally, like I once finally is executed, I know like the all the operations have been completed. The same way like Salesforce did it for Queueable as well. So if what I do is like if I need to do any error logging or do any recovery action, then I would use this transactional finalizers. So that was a use case. There are a lot of things I mentioned, but in the nutshell, whatever I've said, that is the only thing. I'm going into the next slide. Just a simplified version of whatever I mentioned earlier. So when do I use finalizer for logging mechanism? Or you want like once a particular job is done, you want to trigger it another. Or you want to notify user like yes, the like how in the batch class you remember like once a batch class is completed in the finish method, we send an email. The same thing if you want to do it in Queueable, go for this transactional finalizer. Okay. And how do you do that? You need to implement system.finalizer interface. And it's guaranteed like after the Queueable job is finished, this method would get called. Any question on this? Because I think not many would have known about this. It might be new for many of you.
Hello.
Yeah. So could you please explain me again about this finalizer? Yeah.
You know
This
about
is the
finish
new for
method
us.
in batch class?
No, we have
Okay.
not used. Yeah.
Okay, not a problem. See, what happens is like if suppose you're using Queueable, okay? In Queueable, you're doing some processing. Now you want, like suppose after the particular job is being done, you want to trigger another job. Uh, like take into example. Let me just think of a very practical example that you would do. Mm. So suppose you have to apply for a leave. So you would ping your manager like, yes, I want to leave a particular date. Once he gives the go ahead, like you discuss with him, like I want to leave, he approve me, he gives the confirmation. Then after he has given the confirmation, then only you send the request on the portal that please approve this approve my leave. So that operation, like once I was waiting like until the manager gives a verbal confirmation or in the Slack or Teams, then only I would raise a request in the portal. So I'm triggering another job after the first one is completed. So I'm if once I'm getting the response from manager, then only I'm doing that. So that is like of your use case. Like if I want to trigger one job after one the previous one is done, then you would go with finalizer. Or suppose any error comes up, how do you handle it? So instead of doing like try catch and all of those things all over the code, you can just have one place in the finalizer. You can just have a recovery mechanism, like you can log the errors and insert those records or do it through platform event. Either way you can go and do the handling. I think the
Okay.
better picture would be shown, means you would be get a clear picture when I show you a code, I guess so.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so this is a simple code, like it's creating accounts. So we are passing the accounts as in the constructor, and then we are creating an instance of finalizer. Class is in the next slide. I'm just using system.attach finalizer, and then I'm inserting those records. Okay, it's not doing anything complex. Whatever is passed as a account as a parameter, I'm just inserting that. Now what I do is, once that finalizer from the we get the finalizer context as a parameter, so I am able to check whether if the job is completed, then I would can do a debug, means create a system debug that yes it is created, or if the error comes up, I am also able to get that. So here you are able to get the conclusion, like what happened to that job, whether it is success or it's a failure, you are able to get that. And if again it has to be requeued, it could happen still 5 times. After means any unhandled exception comes up, it would try for 5 times, and again then it would skip that. Yeah.
Hello, hi Ankit.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, I have one question about the database dot stateful. So when will be the use of the database dot stateful, and when will use that finalizer? That I guess that
both
finalizer
are,
will be
yeah, both are
okay.
independent. Like see, database dot stateful is the your use case comes normally with the batch classes, because it doesn't hold in your state. Like batch classes by default are stateless. Suppose you want to
Okay,
count, like suppose out of like 100 records that are to be processed, like how many records have been successful, how many have errored out. You want to send a detail with a consolidated kind of a list. So you will have to maintain the state of the each transition, like whatever is happening in your execute method in the batch class. You would have to store it in your Salesforce state. So for such scenario, you will have to use database.stateful. And now when you would go with the finalizer you would use only with Queueable.
okay, got it. I understood.
Yeah.
Could you please explain it with the difference between queueable context and finalizer context? Then it will be
uh,
more clear.
okay, see, finalizer context tells me like what has happened, like whether the job of means whatever, like see, by default finalizer does not have any idea of what Queueable it is related to. Only once you add this line system attach finalizer, it gets the context of that parent job, like which it needs to attach. Then it tracks it, like what the polling that we used to do earlier, like in Apex Async job, that whether that job is successful or not. Same thing it is handling internally. So it checks like whether that result is success or it is failure, and then you're able to do the things. In the Queueable context, what you do is like you not anything specific I'm able to recollect. With final means what I can tell you is like in finalizer context, what you're doing is just you're checking like what is the status of your job which it is attached to. That's it, I would say. Okay.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah.
Uh, do we have to use two classes to implement both separately, Queueable and Finalizer, or we have to
Yes,
implement
yes,
it in?
yes, yes. Ideally, you would should be using different classes. For the sake of simplicity, I've used both the means have accommodated it in the same one. Otherwise, what would happen? Like it would be difficult for you to relate to which is the actual cable, which is the finalizer, how you're attaching it. So the things would become a little bit messy for means difficult for you to understand. Not you means in the audience to understand. So that's why I thought like I will, although as per means while writing the code, again a disclaimer, this is just for illustration. And ideal implementation, you would always use this, go with the solid principles and have a separate classes for each of those.
And retrying Queueable in case of any failure, is that the purpose of Finalizer?
Mm, you can say like it will do it for it by default. Means suppose if you are trying to enqueue it, it won't by default do it, but before because I have written this code, it would try it because I have again enqueued that job again, right? Here I have written that like again system.enqueue in when the else statement, else means it is failure, right? So I will, it would again enqueue the job again and again to process it unless if I get the error again, then it would try to reprocess it. It's like in schools or we, so it, till three times the failure is accepted, right? After that you will be detained from that school. So it's like that. It would try for five times. After that it doesn't happen, then it would not do anything. That job would be removed.
Yes.
Okay.
And can you give any example of in what cases Queueable class could get errors?
See, queuable classes is actually by default. I would say, what does the queuable do? It does the processing, right? The error can come up because of any validation errors, or it could be because of some exceptions. Exceptions could also be for multiple reasons. Suppose there's like you don't have access of that record and you are trying to do that, or you have a field missing, or it could be you're doing a call out but you have missed while doing a call out you are not enable means the cpu time means what you say, even after 60 seconds the response is not received, so you get error. So there could be multiple reasons. Means you don't consider like the error is actually because of queueable, the error is actually because of your apex logic.
Okay,
Like,
okay. Yes.
or one more thing would be like after like in the queueable perspective, like after 50, like if you're putting a means so at the time only 50 records you would be able to do the chaining. So if it goes beyond that, then it would throw the error of queueable exception, something like that. Okay.
Yes.
Then the next part is like some consideration. Queueable does not have SLA, so we would have to make sure like queueable executes fast. You have the you can control like there are some methods available in Queueable to check like the depth, like get stack depth is the method that is available. Even you can delay the Queueable, like if you want a substantial delay of 5 seconds, 10 seconds, you can do that. Always use transactional finalizer for error logging or any recovery. Okay.
Can you explain SLAs?
SLA means service level agreement, means there's no timelines, like I'm not time specific, like suppose it has to be like within how 10 minutes, means it has to be happen immediately, or we don't know, means near real time near means you can consider relate to SLAs like a real time, near real time kind of a scenario. Like Queueable would be executed obviously in asynchronous mode only, so you have to consider that would not be immediate.
Okay.
So
Yes.
SLA is the actually denotes your service level agreement. So and that relates to like getting a particular job completed till a particular duration. Like suppose you have a SLA of say 1 day, so in 1 day it has to be done anyhow. So
It's
it's
for
like
the
that.
particular time, I guess.
Sorry.
response in specific time.
Correct. Now I think which came we already covered it. So I would say like it's the future method that came first, Queueable came after. So only future method can say like सबसे पहले मैं ही आया. Okay.
Yes, yes.
uh, then the next part is batch class. We all know batch class is like large data volume. If you want to process, always go with batch classes. Up to 50 million records it can process. And here you get query means there are two parameters of start method. One is your database dot query locator, and other is your iterable. So database dot query locator is for what if the data that you want to process is not available readily in your code, you need to query that. So you use database dot query locator in that use case. If suppose you already have the data with you, then how wish I showed it for you in this queueable, you're passing it the list as a parameter. Same thing you can do with the batch classes as well. And like you always like a database dot stateful is available as we already mentioned. And then schedulable also you can accompany that, but ideally the recommendation is to have a separate schedulable class. And like by default it is stateless only batch class. Any specific question you have for the batch class or
Yes. What is the main difference of iterable versus database dot get query locator except
the
the
use
remaining
yeah, the
order?
use case is only around like whether you have the data with you already or you don't have the data with you, you want to query that. Suppose you want to do kind of a iteration related some item, like you already have the data and you want to process it. Like suppose there are some thousands of records and you there's a custom logic that you want to implement. It needs to go like from first index, it now has to go with the third index only next, or you want to have some different kind of complex requirements, then you go with iterable. Otherwise in practical use cases you would observe like you may utilizing only database.get query locator. Or
Can
do you
you elaborate more?
sorry? Okay, I shall elaborate it more. Okay, suppose main use case you would observe is like data is available with you readily, or you have to query that record. Like suppose I want to process the orders like in the code, like suppose I'm already querying the order records in some controller, and I want to pass it to the batch class because I think like it would be like I'm expecting like it can be more records as well, so I'm calling it a batch class from the normal controller. So in such scenarios, I would already have the orders with me. So it won't make sense for me to again query that same records from batch class because I already have the data. But suppose I don't have the data and I want to process it individually, or I want to just pass the list of IDs. So what I can do is like I can query the records using the IDs and then do the logic. Then what Salesforce would do is like Salesforce would chunk the whatever records that are coming up. Yeah, your use case would be if the volume is too much large, then it's preferable like you use the database.query locator because it would chunk the records. Like it won't be like all the records executed at once, but it would query like what in the whatever batch size you specify by default 200, it would process 200 means 200 or whatever is the chunk size, and it would process the logic for that in each of your execute method that would be called.
Uh, Hello, am I audible? Am I
Yeah,
audible?
yeah.
Okay, sir, just one simple doubt I have. Say, suppose we need to process a large chunk of records. Okay, so say, suppose I use Queueable Apex, where Queueable Apex keep 50 transaction. Also, as per my knowledge, Queueable having 100 transaction in the waiting state. Now, say, suppose I have a object by which I am doing the processing, and also I keep one more object where it will hold keep 100 processing transaction, and I just try to process the queue in the small chunks. So in that case, will the Queueable Apex will be the more efficient one as compared to the batch?
No, that's not the approach. Like, see, batch
Mhm.
class is recommended if you have anything in large volume. That is very specific use case that you want to process. Queueable, your use cases that I mentioned earlier, like your use case for Queueable should only be three. Like, you want to track it or you want to chain it. You don't have any volume consideration that you have to consider while using Queueable. So if your use case is specific to high volume, go with batch class. Don't give a second thought to Queueable. Queueable is advised for a specific reason, like you want to pass the user as a parameter, you want to chain it, or you want to have a long running operation. But batch class is specifically in place to handle large amount of data. So the recommendation should be always like to go with batch classes if you already know that the volume is too much large. Plus, you are getting like what do you call, from the processing perspective, it's already chunking the data for you. With the Queueable, if you while you're splitting it and doing so much chaining, that would again add too much complexity for you as well. Instead, let Salesforce handle the things in a simple way. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Ankit, there is question. One question is like that you said some limit of 50 million records for batch Apex, right?
Correct, correct,
So
correct, correct.
I have 55 million or 60 million. In that case, how it like how we need to take care of that?
See, in in such scenarios, what you need to do is like uh, you will have to add additional filters. Like suppose after 50 million limit is reached, then I would have to like create two batch classes. I think one would be like particular based on the date filter. You would have to handle it, I guess. Like only like the initial. First of all, that much records handling it means putting it in Salesforce is not a recommended approach. That would lead to performance degradation. And suppose still you want to do it, then you would have to have multiple batches to do that.
I mean, there are two different NQ jobs were running simultaneously.
Correct, correctly, but you would have a different condition. Like you would have to do means if I have to do this requirement, then what I would do is like I will put a order by in the created date or some other filter, and make sure like those records are not overlapping, which would make sure of that. Like suppose what few records which are before 2014, I would keep it differently, and what no, records which are after 2014, I would keep it differently. And I can process the means I would write the code in the some utility, so I could call it means I can reuse the code, and that way I could proceed. But ideally, this kind of huge amount of data, you should not be keeping it in Salesforce at all.
Okay, okay.
Can you do that using bulk API?
Bulk API, like I
When it comes to like more than 50 millions, then we generally prefer bulk API.
I think you can do that, but again, like it depends. Like if the use case means the processing is straightforward, then you could always go with that. But if the logic is not that much straightforward, then again you'll have to go with some kind of customization like this batch class and all. So it would depends. Like every you will have to have a clear picture about like what kind of data is there, what is the level of complexity that is involved within its processing, and then you would have to make a decision based on that.
Okay.
Uh, Hello. Yeah. Sir, say suppose I need to do a future, I need to call a future class via the batch class. What the process I know that there should be a Queueable class via which I should call it future class, and that Queueable I should call inside the batch. So my question is, can I keep that in any of the custom function as well inside the batch class, or is I need to keep it in the any specific function only, like start, execute, and finalize?
I
Third
think
thing.
in the execute method only you will have to do that.
Mhm.
I think I mentioned it somewhere in the slide. Yes. in the future, if you have to do a queueable in the future method in your queueable, then you'll have to do it in your execute method only. This one. Sorry, your question was this only, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Hello, I have
Yeah.
one question about future method.
Okay.
How, how many ways we can abort the future method? Is there any way?
How many method means what you want to avoid?
Future
About
method. Is
about
there any
about.
future? Is
Okay.
there? Yes.
System.abort, I have heard about it. Means directly killing means aborting a future method. I think I would need to explore a little bit more on how to avoid the future method because you don't have any control. I think because you don't have an ID, so I don't think you would be able to
Yes.
control that actually.
Yes, I guess like that.
Because if you would have the ID, then means you don't get an ID. Like you would be able to do the manipulation only if you have the ID for that job. Like in Queueable, like you can do that. You have the methods for controlling the execution. Like you can pause the execution, you can even resume it. Everything is possible, but here it's not possible.
Can you explain flex queue?
Actually, we are means I could explain, but I think we are going for from the scheduled time, so I would want to wrap up the session, I think. But yeah, definitely we can take a further session elaborating more on the flex queue side of it as well.
Yeah, sure.
Ankit, I have a query. Like, is it a good practice? Do we need to include all the methods, future, queuable, batch inside one Apex class? If there is any requirement games, how to handle it at all?
You should have a separate classes, and it again boils down to solid principles where it's like single responsibility means your one Apex code should be responsible only for one activity. Like if suppose what you could do is like you can create a helper class or utility class, and you can call the same this utility class from multiple classes. That should be your approach, and you should keep the classes separate. See, you need to understand why we segregate this logic, because first of all it is easy for us to know like where if a change is made, where I need to update the code. And second is like if the volume is means the length of code is too much, then it becomes difficult for me to search and figure out like where the updates could be made. So you need to keep it the classes separate only. Okay.
Okay.
Mm. So just final scheduled Apex, self-explanatory. If I have to schedule it, then I go with scheduled Apex. System.schedule is the method. You pass a cron expression, create the instance, and that's it. Very simple. And these are the design means these are the things to consider. Like you for batch class, 50 million records you're able to process. Given 50 jobs, you're able to process it from serial transaction and use transaction finalizers. This is taken from the Salesforce official slide.
So, just calling schedule epics from the flows for automate this process will be a right approach, or shall we use the traditional apex trigger for calling schedule epics? Say, suppose I need to automate this scheduling process also. In that case,
If you have to schedule automate the scheduling, then why you want to do anything like that? What you could do is like simple in system.
mm-hmm,
Not suppose you have a requirement, like suppose every 10 job minutes the job has to be scheduled, right?
mm-hmm,
Then I can like you would create an anonymous script and you would have the cron expression like it should define like after you would have the cron expression for each of the like suppose if it is every 10 minutes, then there would be six times you would write system.schedule, and you would have different cron expression for that.
Okay, but for that also I need to write some kind of automation so that it will
No, no,
get
no. It
called
would be
every
just one time. It would be just one time, and then automatically the system would take care of that. You don't need to write it. Means call that automation means that automatically scheduling via some other mechanism.
Okay. Is there any way where I don't have even to execute one single time? Means every 24 hour it will automatically calls once and the process start. It's some kind of feature is still there.
See, you could have scheduled flows which would execute every 24 hours or every week as well.
Mhm.
And if suppose you want to schedule Apex class, you could do it via your in the Apex you have the option of selecting a class and defining like at what are the times so like you want to schedule it automatically. You can define the time as well. Suppose you have a requirement of like every 10 minutes or something, then you would have to go with the approach of creating a one-time script and then running it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Ankit, can we use constructor inside batch Apex?
Yeah, obviously.
I think we cannot use that because
No,
constructor
no, no. You
is
can,
a,
you can, you can, you can.
constructor is a, like a synchronous. We
No,
consider
no,
that
no.
as
Like. See. This is like a constructor, right? This is a constructor.
no. I'm asking in batch Apex.
Yeah, in batch Apex as well, you do that. Actually, you use it like normally. What we do is, if you have the use case of say iterable, like when you don't want to query the data, you want to use the data as it is. In such scenarios, you pass that list as a parameter in your constructor itself, and do the assignment similar to how you see it here, and then use this variable in your execute method, like how we are doing it here.
Okay.
Try it once. It's perfectly doable. We have been doing it all the time.
Okay.
Mm. So with this, any final questions? And
Sir, hello. Yeah,
yeah,
sir. See, right now the two main challenges which Salesforce is facing. The first one is that govern limit problem, and the second one is that expensive license costing, and these two the are the main problems. So I just want to know, as per your experience, what will be your recommendation to counter these two?
see, we'll go one by one. First is your license.
Okay.
See, you need to know like what are the actual functionalities which Salesforce, which actual business is using. Like take into example, suppose in your implementation you're just using account and contact. You're not utilizing other CRM features. You are just using account contact. Some custom updates are there, and suppose you're using Salesforce license for that. I would say go with Salesforce platform in that regards because account contact, task and activity comes under your Salesforce platform license only, and you get around a limit of around 20 custom objects along with your platform license. So Salesforce platform license is considerably very low compared to the core platform license core Salesforce license that is available. So that I would use. And suppose like taking about integration, like there's an integration separate license is also available. I think it's called identity license, where the cost is quite low as compared to the other core Salesforce license. But that only say me with that license only would be able to access the data via API. There would not be like you won't be able to see the data on the UI. But cost wise, it's more optimized considering that.
Mhm.
It actually needs to boils down to you are able to what are the feature me objects you're touching, what are the capabilities you are utilizing. Then the things come up around that. So and what was your other question around?
That our Salesforce having
governor
Government
limits.
limits issue, yeah. So a part of platform events, because that's a very common answer. A part of that is do we have any other recommended approach by which we can to one extent bypass that thing?
See, governor limits are in place because, like, see, when in any cloud platform you take it, there will be some limits imposed because there's very limited hardware, like infrastructure level things are available because you are utilizing cloud. So limits were always there in. And suppose you are bypassing the limit, so uh, I would consider like what are the use cases, like you would have to do an analysis, like what are the things like governor limits you are getting in, and how could you overcome that. Like suppose storage, like taking into example like large data volume you are getting, so you would have to think of it like whether I should actually need that data in my Salesforce or not, or putting it into third party like systems like AWS. I should be considering that, or you need to use the big objects. Or suppose you are encountering limits around, like you are getting CPU timeout, say not yeah, CPU timeout, and you have to revisit your automations, like how many automations are happening at the same time on the same object, not at the same time but on the same object. So then you will have to optimize, like you have to define the sequence number, or you would have to move all the automations into one single mechanism only, instead of having a multiple mechanism, like you're having a trigger as well, you're having a flow as well. So only have one kind of automation. So you have to revisit those things.
Okay.
Is there any other way to call a web service after execution of the batch? Because I think future doesn't support by the batch.
You can do the batch, you can do the calling of call, do the call out in batch. You have to implement database.allow call out, and you would be able to do the call out in
Oh,
batch class.
okay, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, so Ankit, we are about to end.
Yeah.
If you want like session on the any other topics, right? For all the trailblazers, so feel free to suggest the topic name, and we will consider uh, organizing session based on your like interest. So feel free to DM to Ankit or me or in group. So accordingly we will plan. And I want to thank you all of joining today's sessions. Okay, on this Async Apex. So it was like great experience hosting this like meetups. So a special thanks to our speaker Ankit for sharing the knowledge and real world experience. Um, Real world experience, and your insights are very like insightful. And I also want to thank to all the attendee for your time, participation, and
Yeah.
the questions. Okay, so looking forward to seeing you all in the next session. So keep learning, keep inspiring, and let's grow together, let's succeed together. And yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, and always, as like Sunny has already mentioned, spread the word across the community that such sessions are happening. Might be some of your friends are not aware of this session, so they didn't join. But if you tell them, they would also grow along with you. So it would help us grow as a community.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much,
Thank you.
guys. Thank you so much for your
Sorry,
time.
this
Bye
will
bye.
be available right on YouTube after some time. This entire video.
Yeah, it would be available. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, guys. Thank you.